angle measures. So for the first special right triangle, it's going to be a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So what that means is here's our triangle. We have a 90 degree, and then we have two angles that are a 45 degree. Okay. Now the three sides have a relationship with one another. The length of the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 times the length of the legs. Okay. Well, if these are both 45 degrees, what type of triangle is this? Where we have two angles that are the same. Isosceles. So if we have these two angles the same, what can you tell me about the two sides that are opposite of those angles? These are also the same. So we're going to label these both as n. We're using n because n's aren't used a lot in problems. Most of the time we're looking for x. So if we put an n here, we shouldn't get confused with our problems. And then the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 times the length of the leg. So we're going to say it's n square root of 2. Okay. Now how this helps us is if I give you a triangle that is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and we want to find x and y with this side being 5. Okay? So what can you tell me about side x here? What would x have to equal? 5. X would have to be 5. Okay? Because we see in our 45, 45, 90 triangle the two legs are the same. All right? What would the hypotenuse have to be? So over here.
Square root of 2?
Yeah, good. 5 square root of 2. So over here we see that our hypotenuse was n square root of 2. We figured out that this n was 5, so we can write it as 5 square root of 2. All right, we're going to do a few more just with that. So I'm just going to redraw the 45, 45, 90. And I'm going to show you a few different techniques and ways how you can solve this. So here's another one. Another 45, 45, 90. I'm going to tell you that this side is 6 square root of 2. And we want to find out what our x and our y is. Now, one of the ways that's going to be helpful to many of you is that whenever you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, is to label the three sides with these three labels. Okay? So to take the hypotenuse and label it as n square root of 2, and label your other two sides as n.
So I have a question. What if one of the legs is like a square root number? Like it's
We'll do one like that. So you label the three sides, and then you circle the side that you know. So what side do we know here? What side do we have a number on? Yeah, we have a number on 6 square root of 2. So we're going to make an equation out of that side. So we're going to say, okay, 6 square root of 2 is equal to n square root of 2. How would you solve for n?
square them.
Well, and this is n times something, right? So how do we get rid of it?
Divide.
We just divide. Okay, so if we divide by the square root of 2, those cancel. What happened with these two square roots of 2's? They cancel, so what is our n?
6.
6. Well, if our n is 6, what does y have to equal?
6. And then x equals
6, and x also then would have to equal 6.
This seemed a lot harder last year.
Does that make sense? Okay, let's do another 45, 45, 90. Let's see, I'm going to give you, this side is 5 square root of 2. Okay? So let's go through and let's label the sides. Okay? So what are my two legs? What am I going to label my two legs as? N and n. And my hypotenuse is n square root of 2. Ooh, I got to label what side's x and y. This one is x. I didn't change it. This one is x. That side is y. Okay, so what side do we know here? That's the side we know. So that's the equation I have. N equals 5 square root of 2. Well, if n equals 5 square root of 2, what does x have to equal? Because down here, n and x are on the same side as well.
5 square root of 2.
Yep. So x is 5 square root of 2.
So,
But now how are we going to find y? So this is also an equation.
so do we divide the square root again? Or?
No, if we know n is equal to 5 square root of 2, we just replace that with our n here. So y is equal to n squared root of 2. So instead of writing n, we'll write 5 square root of 2. Okay, so we replace the n with the 5 square root of 2. What do we get when we times square root of 2 times square root of 2 together? 2. So this is now 5 times 2. What's 5 times 2? 10. So y is 10.
Why did this seem harder last year?
Okay, you want to do another one like this one?
Yeah.
The square root on there? Okay, so there's our general triangle. Let's see. Make this side x, side y, and this side will be 3 square root of 2. Okay, so what should we do first with our 45, 45, 90? What should I do first? What have we done first for the last 3 or 4? Label. So I'm going to label this side as n, that side is n, that side is n squared root of 2. Okay, which side did we know actually have the number 4? This one. So that's our equation. N equals 3 square root of 2. So what other side has our n labeled? Right here. So if n equals 3 square root of 2, what does x have to equal? Yep, 3 square root of 2. Then up here we have y equals n square root of 2, but what's our n? N is, what's our value for n that we have? 3 square root of 2, so we're going to replace the n with the 3 square root of 2 and times it by the square root of 2. Yep, 2 square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2, so 3 times 2 is 6. Are you getting the hang of those ones? Okay. So we have another special right triangle, which is a 30, 60, 90. So the 30, 60, 90 the 30, 60, 90, it says the length of the hypotenuse, so the hypotenuse is always opposite of our 90, is twice the length of the shorter leg, so we're going to make that 2n. Our shorter leg is going to be opposite of our 30, so n. And the longer leg is the square root of 3 times the length of the shorter, so this one's n square root of 3. So here's our relationship every single time. So when we see a triangle that has 30 degrees and 60 degrees, we want to label the 3 sides as n square root of 3, and 2n. And then we're going to do the same thing we just did. We're going to figure out what the other side should be. So here's an example. So let's say I give you this side is 4, and that's x and that's y.
So x would be 4 square root of 3, right?
All right, well, let's label. So this side is n. This side is n square root of 3, and that is 2n. So we know 4. So we're going to circle that side and put our equal sign in between them. So what does n have to equal? N's got to be 4. It's right here. Just be 4 right here. So now if I want to find x,
It'd be 4 square root of 3.
right, x here says n square root of 3, but our n is really 4, so this is 4 square root of 3 is our x.
It would be 8 for y.
Yeah.
2 times 4.
So then y is equal to 2n. 2 times 4, when we replace our n with 4, is 8. So y would be 8. Does that make sense? I see some confused looks. We'll do a bunch more like this. Okay. I hope you guys would draw out this triangle and how it's labeled somewhere in your notes because you're going to need it. Okay, let's do one. Let's say I gave you this side over here is 10. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to label the 3 sides. So what side is 10 going to be labeled as? 2n. Okay, what side will this side down at the bottom, the one opposite of 30, be labeled as? N, and what side will our other? N squared root of 3. Okay, so we're going to find the other 2 sides, and these other 2 sides are x and y. So we know the 10 side, so we're going to circle that side and make this equation. So we know 10 should equal 2 times n. Well, if 10 equals 2 times n, what does n have to be? How do we get n alone from there? Yep, divide by 2, so what does n have to be? 5. Okay, so we got n to be 5. Well, if n is 5, x is 5. Yep, and then y has to be 5 square root of 3. Okay, because n was 5, so we put the 5 in here. We solved this equation. 10 equals 2n. Okay. Well, I gave you the side length of 10. And then we knew it equals 2n because we labeled our triangle with our 3 sides, with our 2n, our n, and our n squared root of 3.
And every problem will be like that? Like there will be a side?
There'll be one side that you know, and you're going to label it, and the one side that you know is the side that you make your equation out of.
It's that easy?
Yeah. It'll always, this side, the hypotenuse will always be a 2n. The shortest side will always be n, and the longer side will always be n squared root of 3. Okay, let's do another one. Let's see. Let's do. We'll get to all those. Don't worry. Okay, so let's have this triangle. So here I've got 30, 60, 90. My short side is x, my hypotenuse is y, and my longer leg is 6 square root of 3. So we want to label. Okay, so what will I label my y side as? 2n. What will I label my 6 square root of 3 side as?
And this is just going off of that?
It's going off of this one every time, yep. What will I label my other side as? N. Okay, so what side do we know? We know the 6 square root of 3. So 6 square, whoopsies. So 6 square root of 3 is equal to n square root of 3. How do I get my n alone? Divide by my square root of 3. So what happens to the square roots of 3's? They cancel, so n is 6. Okay, if n is 6, x has to equal 6. And y would have to equal 2 times n. But our n is 6, so 2 times 6 is 12. Is that one okay? Are you getting the idea of this? Okay, let's try some more examples with it. Find the missing lengths. So here's a triangle. These 2 sides are labeled x. The hypotenuse is labeled as a 6. See if I can make this bigger at all. There we go. Okay, so we first have to decide what type of triangle is it. Is it a 45, 45, 90, or is it a 30, 60, 90? Okay, it's a 45, 45, 90. We know that because one of the angles has a 45-degree measurement. Right there. We see that 45 degrees? So that tells us it's a 45, 45, 90. Okay, so since this is a 45, 45, 90, we need to label the sides. So how will I be able to label my sides for this one?
The two x's would just be n.
Okay, so the two x's are n's. And what is a 6?
6 equals n squared 2.
Okay, so 6 equals n squared of 2. So this is the one I have to solve for my n. Okay? Now, what would we have to do to get n alone here?
When you divide by a square root of 2.
Yeah, we would divide by the square root of 2. So now we have 6 divided by the square root of 2 is our n. Does that look like it is simplified? Does it look? No. We can't have a radical in the denominator. So
it has to be flipped, doesn't it?
it doesn't have to be flipped. We need to multiply this by something. If I multiply this by the square root of 2, what would my denominator become? 2. Okay, so if I multiply my denominator by the square root of 2, what should I multiply my numerator by? The square root of 2. Okay, so I now have 6 square root of 2 over square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. Can I simplify 6 over 2? What does 6 over 2 simplify down to? 3. So n is equal to 3 square root of 2. Now this problem is a little bit harder than the ones we did before, because we had to simplify this denominator. Okay? All right, well, if n is equal to 3 square root of 2, what does x have to equal? If n is 3 square root of 2, x has to be 3 square root of 2. So that's our value for x. Is that okay? Yeah, the other x would be the same exact thing. Is that one okay? All right, let's look at the next one. What type of triangle does this look like it would be?
A box.
It's a box. Okay, so right now it's a square.
So wouldn't it be a 45, 45?
Good. So this, because it's a square here, all four sides are the same. When we draw this diagonal in, right there, when we draw that diagonal in, that's going to cut those two angles in half. So 90 divided by 2 is 45. So this now became a 45, 45, 90. Okay, so what am I going to label my side 8 as? Yep, my side 8 is going to be labeled as n squared root of 2. What will my side A be? N. Okay, so I know my 8 side, so I know n squared root of 2 is equal to 8. Okay, so I divide by the square root of 2. So those cancel. So, okay, so I'm going to times this by the square root of 2. So now I have 8 square root of 2 over square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. So this is really 4 square root of 2. So n is 4 square root of 2, which is also our side A. So this is our A. Do you get the hang of how to do that? Okay. Let's look at another example then.
Where would you use this?
Everywhere.
Where?
Okay.
Where's everywhere?
On your ACT. These are all over on your ACT, James. All right. Next one. What type of triangle does this one look like? A 45, 45, 90 or a 30, 60, 90? Okay, 30, 60, 90. Now the problem is this one isn't in the same exact direction as all our others have been. So you have to kind of visualize it rotated. Okay? So what side would be our 2n on here? The 14. How do we know the side 14 would be the 2n? It's the one opposite of the 90. It's the hypotenuse. Okay? What will I label the 30 degrees? or the side opposite of the 30 degrees is, this one is n, and the other one's n squared to 3. So opposite of the 30 degrees is our n. Okay. So we know 14 is equal to 2n. So what is our n? 7. So this side over here is 7. What is our other side going to be? 7 squared root of 3. Is that one okay? Okay. Let's look at this one. Okay, we're going to find the two missing sides. So is this a 30, 60, 90 or a 45, 45, 90? 30, 60, 90. We know that because we have this 30 degrees. So the side we know is 4 squared root of 3 over 3. Is that n squared root of 3, or 2n? How do we know it's n? Yep, it's opposite of 30, so that's our n. What will be our QR here? Which one? Yeah, QR would be 2n because it's opposite of the 90. Leaving our third side as n squared root of 3. Okay, so there's our n. So how am I going to get my hypotenuse here? Times it by 2. So 2 times 4 squared root of 3 over 3. Well, what's 2 times 4? 8. So we'd say this is 8 squared root of 3 over 3. Is that okay? What do I have to times the n by to get my other side? Square root of 3. So 4 square root of 3 times the square root of 3 over 3. Well, what's square root of 3 times square root of 3? Square root of 9, which is really 3. So this is 4 times 3 over 3.
So it'd be 4.
So it'd be 4. So this side is 4. Is that one okay? One last one, and then we'll have you try this. I wanted to make it bigger, not just put a dot on it. 30, 60, 90, or 45, 45, 90? Okay. 8's the side we know. What will 8 be labeled as? Yeah, 8 will be our n because it's opposite of the 30. What side will the x be? N squared root of 3. And what side will the y be? 2n. Okay, so if my 8 is equal to n, what does my x have to be here? 8 squared root of 3. What does my y have to be? 16. Did you get the hang of it? Kind of understanding? Okay, so we have a book assignment for tomorrow. Page 360, 12 to 25, 36. And, I forgot the last part. 46 to 52 evens. Okay, so that's due tomorrow.